on for about 5 years now. And, my biggest thing is short-term rental arbitrage, where I lease other people's properties out long-term, and then I convert them into short-term rentals and make a spread and profit. And I started back in 2017. I scaled up pretty rapidly. In about 9 months, I had 14 units running. The startup cost is obviously significantly smaller. You can start up a unit for about 10, 15 grand, even cheaper. I've done some as little as, I think, 3 grand, 5 grand, something like that. And so I scaled up very quickly. Fast forward, I had about 9 months, I had 14 units. And then about 2 years later, I kind of slowed down and I had about 28 units. And then COVID came in and I had to close down a bunch of units because the owner sold the building. Long story short, the owner sold the building after COVID because a lot of people weren't paying rent. So the new owner didn't want us in there, which is fine. It happens sometimes. And as of March last year, I believe, I built out about 46 units currently. We have 53 that we're managing. Out of those, 32 of them are mine directly, and the rest are managed with friends and family. So it's been a fun journey. Again, pretty much all rental arbitrage. I do have a duplex right now that's being rehabbed out in Milwaukee that's going to become a short-term rental. And then as of now, I'm actually going into apartment complexes. So we're about to purchase something, hopefully in the next couple of months here, maybe do some syndication, or if I can do it myself, then I'll end up doing it myself. But it just depends on where we get it and the price point and everything else from there. But aside from that, my main focus for the past 5 years has been short-term rentals. That's pretty much it.
Awesome. I love it. So really want to dive into that. So I'll just start kind of bouncing some questions off you. And guys, like I said, you can jump in with questions as well. I don't want to hog the space, but so there's a lot in our group. We cater primarily to healthcare professionals, but we have a lot of people in all different spaces of real estate investing. Some people are just here learning, wanting to know how to get started. There's others here who own a fair share, maybe a handful of deals. There's people doing short-term rentals, syndications, multifamily. So I'm sure a lot of share can be very applicable here, but maybe kind of starting from the beginning, what were some of your initial actions that you took in the beginning to actually get started, or to decide on a strategy, or to really get things moving for you?
Yeah, for sure. So in the beginning, when I first started this, I really just wanted to purchase property so I could make some cash flow, right? Like I did the whole Bigger Pockets thing forever. I've been listening to Bigger Pockets since like 2015, and trying to get into some kind of investment property, right? You guys know everything. It's like literally you buy a property, you're going to cash flow, right? Like that's their entire thing. And I didn't know, much about it back then. So I'm sitting here with some money trying to do research. And I started running numbers and I found out, the properties here in SoCal very quickly that I wasn't going to make any money at all. At that time, I think they were going for like 450 at like 20 grand. I couldn't even afford to buy one to begin with, just a down payment alone and closing costs. And so I was like, well, this isn't going to work. I'm going to be either negative cash flow or probably making 50, 60 bucks, which is not going to get me out of my job. And it's not going to make me a lot of money. At the same time, as I was doing research, I found out about Airbnb and short-term rentals. I knew a guy who was doing it. And he was driving like this Ferrari, some kid, 22 or 23 or something like that. And I'm like, I wonder what he's doing. And come to find out, he goes, oh, well, I have like 8 apartments in this building that are all on Airbnb. And I'm like, oh, you can do that? And so when I found out about that, I started really doing research into it. And then I come to find out that it's technically short-term rentals, right? Airbnb is not the short-term rentals. Airbnb is kind of like the marketing platform. And when I put 2 and 2 together, well, I was like, wait a second, I can actually turn this into a real business. I can go out and lease a bunch of apartments. And I ran numbers and I'm like, I can do at least $1,000 minimum a month profit. It was a no-brainer. And so I started researching it, and I signed up to, it was like a small blueprint for like short-term rentals back then. One of my mentors, he kind of gives it away now. And from that point, I was like, okay, I did a lot of research. Then I started realizing, okay, nobody's letting me in. Like it took me about 6 months to make phone calls and trying to get people to convince them to let me use their property for Airbnb, right? And I kind of put it on the back burner because I kind of got annoyed and kind of like a little bit, downfall, rejection a lot. And then one day we just started shifting. We're like, okay, if these people are telling us no, why are they telling us no? And so we started kind of shifting the way we were taught in the pitch and like kind of like talking to people and trying to convince them. And we ended up finding out that the best way is to find out places that are like in construction or that, they have a lot of vacancy and they need a place where people really need a place to get filled, right? Because they're losing rent money and they're not making any money at all. And so about 6 months after I found out about all this, I finally got my first lease. But it was really the whole action behind it was just getting through rejection and making phone calls and tweaking and pivoting and figure out who actually would allow us and why they would allow us. And it turns out that, when people are vacant or they're in construction or they don't have any type of tenants in their place, they're losing money. And so I come in and I lease them out before they're even built up now or rehabbed and take them over. Does that answer it? I know it's kind of long-winded.
Yeah, no, that was good. I have like 10 more questions. So what market are you invested in?
Orange County, California.
No, that's where you invest?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's okay. You live here and you invest here.
Mm-hmm.
You did make that shift here. Okay. So you're investing where in your own backyard. So that kind of takes away that piece. So you said you were getting rejection again and again. What changes did you make to get over that?
Number one, I had a business partner and we decided that both of us together were going to team up and make it work, specifically so that we can both do something different. So I got over making the phone calls and I hate phone calls. I've been on phones for years. I used to work in collections, so it was like very draining. I just couldn't stand it anymore. And so she started making phone calls, asking people just for the initial viewing of the place. And I would come in and then I would close it. At the same time, I was also working graveyard. So what we did is for the first, I want to say like 3 months, I was calling everybody. Like I pulled up the list of all the apartment complexes in the area and it was like just phone call after phone call, getting rejected, getting comfortable with what I was saying. The biggest thing was getting comfortable with what I was saying and knowing how to explain what we were actually doing. That's the biggest changes I made. I changed how I explained what we were doing, and I changed the apartments we were looking for or the locations we were going after. We were no longer going after the big REITs, the places that don't really care if you're around. We weren't given this like elevator pitch anymore. We were just talking about our customers and what we were actually going to do and how we were going to house them. And then we would talk about the benefits of us taking over the property. That was the biggest shift. And about 6 months later, we found a building that was fully vacant. Oh, I'm sorry. And after that, on top of that, making that shift, we started looking for small places that actually needed us to take over, right? Because they had those vacancies. Not the difference with the big REITs is that they don't care if they have vacancy. They've already accounted for a percentage of vacancy. To them, it's like, hey, we don't care if you're here. Regardless of that, we're gonna account for 10% vacancy or whatever it is, right? And so what we did is we really shifted and said, okay, let's go after the people who really need us to solve their problem of the vacancy. And that's where we started going after the ones that were being rehabbed in construction. And then we shifted the way we were talking about our business. And that's really what changed it all.
Okay. So I know when I've been on podcasts before, I sometimes a couple of the hosts made me go through my script when I'm talking to a new investor. And I think it's super helpful for listeners or people. Can you roll through your elevator pitch of like, your pitch, if you were to get on the line with someone and ask to use their unit for arbitrage, like, what do you say? What's your opening line with that?
Yeah, so I do one phone call and it's like, hey, my name's Rafa. I'm with Nine Ring Properties. We're a corporate housing provider that sets up short-term rentals for families here for leisure, business travelers, and medical professionals in the area. And I'll use a hospital in whatever location I'm in the area. And then I'll talk about the specific businesses that I've actually done business in the past. For example, in my case, we have restaurant owners here that are coming for Disneyland, and when their trainers, their managers come to train some of the new employees, they stay with us. We also house the nurses from UCI and Chalk's Medical Hospital and all that stuff. And so when I talk about that, that's when they really go, oh, okay. But aside from that, when I go there, I go, and we're housing business people, medical professionals, and families here for leisure who are coming to Disneyland who just want to enjoy the beach. And we're looking to expand in your area. And we're looking to open between 5 and 10 locations. Is this something that you guys would be able to work with us? And then I just wait. I literally stop and then I wait because I don't go any further. Here's the mistake that a lot of people make when they're getting started is they go into this gigantic pitch of everything else. Like they start giving way more information than they need to be giving, right? Like a ton more. They shouldn't be giving anything at all. I wait, I hear them out, and I stop to listen to see what they actually tell me, because a lot of people, corporate housing to them means that you're going to bring in their employees, or that you're going to be bringing in other people's employees, but keeping them for 30-day minimums. So I wait to hear what the other person on the other line tells me. They might tell me, sure, yeah, we allow that. That just seems too easy, right? Okay, well, why do you guys allow it? There's got to be a reason. Or if they tell me no, then I go, okay, can I ask why not? And once I get a few more answers from them, it changes the question that I ask next. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So you're calling the property management company of an apartment complex. That's who you're getting on the phone.
Not anymore. So I used to, yes.
Okay.
When I first started, that's what I was doing nonstop. Yes. Now I really go to networking meetups and I talk about my business, and then I end up talking to the owners directly. I still do talk to property managers now and then just to see, but I'm not really actively looking anymore. To be honest, like I'm not actively looking. People just end up sending them to me. I'll get a phone call from someone that says, hey, I got a 10-unit complex. Would you like to take it over? And I'm like, well, I'll run numbers, and if it makes sense, I'll take it. But that's how I started. Yes, that's how I started building relationships.
Yeah, definitely being able to go directly to the owner. And I think that's kind of just proof that I've seen it in the real estate industry as well, is when you go out and constantly talk about what you're doing. And it doesn't have to be in a like flashy, this is what I'm doing. Look at, I'm buying this and I'm buying this apartment, building this, but in a genuine, like, this is what I'm up to. This is how I'm building wealth for my family. This is what interests me. Then you just attract and open up those conversations with people in the industry where you could have more potential to form partnerships, as opposed to if you go down and don't talk to anyone about your doing, no one knows you're investing in real estate. It really eliminates any opportunities like that from even existing.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Once I found out that like people, once I realized that people really want to know what exactly you're doing, like you can give a pitch and they're going to be like, yeah, whatever. I've heard this before, especially now because there's so many people trying to do this. Like everywhere you call, it's like, oh, we've already been through it. We don't want to deal with that. And it just becomes a more difficult conversation to have because now I have to explain to them how we're better, what we do differently, and how we're handling certain situations, right? Like the regular person who calls an apartment complex, they don't know, they're giving the elevator pitch. That's why I always wait to hear what they say on the other line, because once I hear like, oh, well, what does that mean? Or what kind of customers do you bring in? Or how are you vetting these people? Or what do you actually do to sign these leases? Are you subletting? Like all these kinds of questions. And then once you know how to answer them, it opens it up a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier. You kind of warm up to them, right? But I don't get into those conversations until I go in person. So the initial conversation is a phone call. Then I go in person. When I'm there in person, that's when I really look at the place. And if it makes sense for me, that's the first thing I don't even get into it before I look and make sense for me. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to get a yes. And they give you that yes. And then they see that the building just absolutely doesn't make any sense, right? Like you have to go through like 5 gates to get to the apartment. There's no parking, like there's no storage, like it's a tiny little place. It's in the worst location, like all of that. So if I see that it makes sense for me, then that's when I have that conversation. Hey, so I just want to make sure you guys are cool with me doing this, right? Like I'll take 5 units right now. Be aware that I'm not the one staying in it. My company's going to lease it long term. We do the corporate housing thing with the nurses and the business travelers, but mainly we're going to get a lot of people here for Disneyland because that's kind of the attraction. And so I want to make sure you guys are okay with that. Everybody's going to get vetted the exact same way. We run our security procedures the exact same way, but before we do anything else, I need to make sure you guys are okay with this. And then that's when it really gets into the details of the conversation.
Yeah. So what is it, subletting? I guess I don't know enough about our Airbnb arbitrage, but is it subletting? You just brought that up and made me think I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, essentially we're subletting. It's not technically subletting. Okay, so here's the difference. This is an argument we can have with a million people. Everybody tells me one thing or another. We're not subletting because we're not giving any subleases to anybody else, right? Like we're not leasing it. That nobody else signs a lease underneath us, right? But we're subletting because we're letting other people into the place under our lease. Does that make sense? Technically, we're just assigning the location to different people. That's technically what we're doing. But because we want to be protected, we always want to sign a subletting clause or a subletting addendum in the lease, right? Because that'll protect you from everything, whether you're assigning, whether you're bringing people in, it doesn't matter. So anywhere I go, I do end up getting a subletting clause or a subletting addendum just to protect myself if the manager changes or if the owner decides to sell the building, then the new person comes in. I can have it in writing, and it's happened to me numerous times. It's like, hey, I have it in writing. When lease is up, if you don't want me here still, then I can leave. But till then, it's in writing. I'm allowed to do this. But typically when you're in the building already and you're doing good, they actually offer you more locations than actually trying to kick you out.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm sure you get a lot of different answers with that. So you mentioned something earlier about starting on this journey with a partner. I think we have a lot of people in this group, or people who are getting into real estate, and some people go at it very solo and they do their own thing, especially in short-term rentals. You can kind of do that in the space and just acquire them on your own and not have to necessarily build relationships and partnerships with other real estate investors.
Mm-hmm.
You did that before you even started. So why did you do that? What did that look like? What opportunities did that bring to your business? Like, do you feel like it was a valuable?
When we first started it, it was because we were trying to figure out what to do. It wasn't more of like, hey, let's do something together and try to, it was like, what should we do? We were going to buy real estate together anyway. And then when we came across this, it was like, all help us find the place. You help us close the place. I had the funds. We'll get money from both sides of with relationships, and let's see where we can take it. That's really what it was. There was nothing else behind it. When we first started, it was like she was making the phone calls. I was showing up for the appointments. I was closing the appointments. I ended up borrowing money to get started. She borrowed money to continue and scale. And we did pretty well. I mean, for the first. The coolest thing is that we were kind of in sync because we weren't making any actual money because we were reinvesting everything we earned. Like literally, that's what we were doing, just reinvesting everything. So all the money we were making was going back into the business, which is what allowed us to scale so large. Otherwise, we could have taken paychecks and been living large, but that wasn't the goal. We wanted to really scale it and make it significant to where it could set us up where we're at. Now I'm by myself. She has her own business. We kind of split up. She has her own business. I have my own business, same thing. But we're both doing pretty well, literally, because of the sacrifices we made in the beginning. But I think that not having a partner in the beginning would have been difficult because it's what kept me accountable, because I stopped making the calls and she continued to make the calls. Had she not continued to make the calls, I probably would have never gone that first location. Mm-hmm. Right. So.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I started in real estate investing with my husband, and I were going at it together and doing a lot of aspects of the business and then kind of tag teaming certain things. And exactly like you're saying, when one person is feeling discouraged, it's good to be able to tag team. I mean, my husband and I do the parenting to a T with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. It's so essential to be able to tag team your kids. So I feel like doing it in real estate is really kind of an easy transition for us of being able to, like I remember when I first started having phone calls with contractors, they were so difficult. The conversations were so difficult for me to handle. And that was something that I easily and happily transferred over to him early in our business. And now he handles all those calls moving forward. And so for me, being able to have a partner in real estate has allowed us to scale for sure, and be able to not have to work on the parts of the business that you don't necessarily want to. And I think that's where partnering with other people, if you have a similar mission with complementary skills, it can be a really good way to scale in the space. But I'm interested, when you guys first started working together, did you guys develop any sort of contract, or it seemed kind of more casual? Was it pretty like more handshake understanding, or how did that kind of look for you guys?
Well, we were kind of in a relationship at the time, so it was very easy. Yeah, it was very easy. It wasn't like, hey, we need to sign an agreement or a contract. It was like, hey, we're both going to win. We're both going to make money. Let's just go forward, right? So it was a lot easier to do that in the beginning with that partnership. But the difference was that I was working graveyard. So when I would get off of work, it was go to sleep, right? Mm-hmm. I would sleep during the day. So while I was sleeping, she was making all these phone calls and setting the appointments for the next day. So I would get off of work and I would go see the appointments right after work. And then once we were done with the appointments, I would come home and I would sleep, and she would continue making the phone calls. When we got the first yes, I built out the units. She designed the units. She was really good. She's really good at design. That's her thing. Like, she still designs some units now that are just like, wow. And so it continued that way for, I don't know, like 3 years or something, until we decided, hey, let's just go our own ways. Not only we split up on top of that. So that kind of was like, we were still partners even after we split up, but then it was like, she wanted to do her own thing. She got her own like relationship. And so I was like, hey, no hard feelings. Let's just do this. We kind of did we came to an agreement. We sat down and said, okay, what's a win-win for the both of us? Because again, we didn't have an agreement in the beginning. So it wasn't going to be like, hey, I take this, you take that. It's like, let's be mature. Let's be adults. We're still business partners. What do you want to do? And it was like, okay, well, either you buy me out or I buy you out, or we just split everything and be fair. So we split a couple units. I ended up keeping the company. So I ended up giving her kind of like a buyout. and she took a couple units, and then I helped her set up units at locations where I was at already. So she's even now, she's like got a couple units in some, not in my areas, but I'm so not in my buildings, but in my areas that I've gotten her as well.
Awesome. Cool. No, I really appreciate you sharing that stuff. I feel like sometimes people don't dive into partnerships and how they're structured and kind of the web that is weaved there, but it's super insightful to understand how you can strategically place partnerships in business.
Yeah, no, so I actually have new partnerships now, right? Like I'm very careful with the partners I make or I partner up with. Number one, depending on the type of partnership. If it's a passive investment, then it doesn't really matter. We just put a regular contract in place and that's it, right? I have people like friends and family who've given me money to open units, and I'm like, okay, this is what you're getting. Here's on paper. This is what you'll get paid out, and that's the end of it. There's nothing else. But right now, I literally recently, like in the last month, I created a new partnership with these two other guys where we're doing like a whole like NFT project with my short-term rental. So we're kind of converting this whole business into like a crypto business, and we're bringing real life to it. Anyway, long story short, I made sure that everything was 100% in writing. And before that, I made sure I really liked them. Like we're actually pretty good friends. I've known them for about a year, so it's still relatively new, but I made sure that everything was in writing, operating agreements in place, and there's an exit for anything that just in case anything else happens. Because worst thing you want is at the end of it, if there's a divorce in partnership, like it's going to come back and bite you because there's going to be a disagreement. The reason people split up is usually because of disagreements. It's not, hey, I want to go out and do my own thing. You do your own thing. You know what I mean? So I'm very careful now.
Yeah, totally. Hey, Lenny, go ahead. You can take yourself off mute and ask a question.
Cool. Hey, man, thanks again for coming on. This is very insightful. We really appreciate it. When it comes to partnerships, it sounds like you got quite a few. Are all your partnerships like the same, or are they different? That's kind of one question. The second question is, when it comes to distributions, how are you doing that?
Yeah, for sure. So they're all different. Keep in mind that I do a lot of arbitrage, right? For example, my duplex, I was actually going to partner with someone, and I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to do it myself because it was going to be like it was going to be a 50-50 split. They brought money, I brought money. We were going to buy it together, but then they were getting really complicated. Like they wanted like way more than we were agreeing to, and it was just became kind of like we're not going to deal with this. I'll do it myself. I'll bring you on the next one. But for my arbitrage units, I did, for example, I'm trying to think of one because I have several. My first one, they brought the money in. I managed all of it. I set it up, and then they just get a percentage of profits every single month, and I pay them out every 6 months. And it's simple. We did an agreement on paper that says, okay, you brought the money in. This is what you're going to get every 6 months. I'm going to pay you out, and that's it for the life of this one unit, right? And we've been going for 5 years. I have another one where it's literally a friend from from talking. One of my friends saw that I was doing pretty well because I'm over here like talking about short-term rentals, and I'm getting kind of popular and doing a lot of speaking gigs and stuff like that. And he picked up on that. And he goes, hey, I got about 45 grand laying around. Can I invest with you? And I'm like, well, I'm doing arbitrage. I'm not actually buying something. He's like, hey, I just want cash flow. I don't care. That money's been sitting in the account since we like pretty much graduated high school. And I'm like, dude, yeah, you're losing mad money. Give it to me. And so what I did with him was I opened up, he actually gave me $30,000 the first time. And he goes, I'll give you 30 grand. I opened two bedroom apartments. And I said, I'll give you 33% of all profits. We'll just be fair, and I'll do it for 5 years, right? It's been 3 years. He already made back 45 grand, and we still have 2 years left on that little deal. And then fast forward to the 3 years, which was 2 months ago, we hit 3 years, I believe. He goes, hey, you already gave me back the money, and I got more money in there. I got another 45 grand. You want it? And I'm like, yeah, why not? I'll open some more units. And so I opened up 4 more units. And I said, hey, for these 4, I'll just give you 33% for the life of the units. I don't really care. Right at this point, I'm already doing very well off. This guy trusted me years ago. He's giving me back the money. We're really good friends. I was like, dude, if you win, I win. I don't care. So now for these 4 units, he's going to get 33% for the life of the units, as long as they're open, right? They could shut down next month. They could be open for the next 5 years. The beauty is that he knows that I'll continue to work hard to, like, if they shut me down, I'll just move them somewhere else and continue. It'll be a hiccup and it'll cut us off, but we'll make more money. That's another way I did it. And then I did another one where it was a straight loan. Somebody was like, hey, I got 20 grand. I was like, let me borrow them. I was going to borrow money from a credit line, and I'm going to pay them back 25,000. I'll give you, I'm sorry, 24,000. I'll give you the 4,000. She's like, okay, I'll give you 24-month terms. I paid her back in 12 months. and I paid her back 24,000, and she was super happy. And now she's like, hey, whenever you need more money, I got it. I'm like, okay. So those are the ones that I'm talking about that are like passive, right? As far as the actual, like for my first business partner, it was 50-50 down the middle. We just both did. We basically sat down and said, hey, and it wasn't even sitting down. We on the way of us growing, it was like, hey, you're gonna be the one in charge of making the phone calls. I'll be in charge of closing the deals. I'll be in charge of bringing the money. You be in charge of design when we get the place, and I'll make sure that it just gets set up properly, right? Whether I hire Home Depot guys, whether I do it myself, whatever it was, right? And so as we were growing, that was it. Anytime we opened a unit, she would design. Alex, what's up, buddy? She would design, and I would set up. And that's literally what it was the entire time. And everything was 50-50, right down the middle. If I got a paycheck, she got a paycheck. And we would do a draw every single month for us two. And then at the end of it, when we decided to split up, we just wanted to do what was fair for both of us. That was it. Hopefully that answered it. They're all different, but like, okay, I'll give you one last one. Like the one I have with these two guys right now, we're literally just said, sorry, I have a lot of ideas in my head, so I can pop them out. But with them, I was like, hey guys, this is what we're gonna do. They provided all the money. The deal we set up was crazy. So you guys are gonna kind of flip out on this, but I actually sold 10 of my units to this partnership. So 10 arbitrage units were sold at $200,000, right? I sold them to this entity, and we're three-way partners on this one entity. And they were cool with that because they're like, they were going to give me 500 grand to go open units. We were going to partner three ways. And I'm like, why do you guys want me to go do that? I have this already really successful business. I'll just sell you guys these units from my business where it's instant cash flowing. You guys pay me the money. And then any profits from this, we split three ways. And they loved it. They're like, yeah, we absolutely love it. And so I sold 10 units, made 200 grand technically to my new entity, which I control a third of anyway. And now I'm making 33% of those 10 units. Plus they had 5 units themselves that entity bought out. And so now I have 15 more units total sitting there. And then anything that we get going forward, we're just going to put into that new entity, and we're just going to split everything three-way, but I still keep my own stuff on the side. Does that make sense? We just say, hey, let's just do everything three ways. Yeah.
100%. That's awesome. Love it, love it, love it.
If this is not blowing your mind, I mean, this is exactly why I asked the question about partnerships, because I think a lot of people try and think about these things, and there's so many ways to make money in this industry. There are just so many ways that you can partner with people and team up with people, and whatever you're good at. I mean, it's not a one size fits all. There's so many different ways that you can do this. So that's so awesome. I love that you just acknowledged that.
You know, one last thing too, Savannah, that I want to add on there, guys, with these two kids that I partnered up with, you know, I helped them get started a year ago, which is when I met them. They saw what I was doing, and they were living in one of the buildings. So, you know, I had like a 20-minute conversation with them. In their minds, I'm the expert at short-term rentals, like the full time, like there's nobody better. And I'm like, it's funny because I'm just like, this is what I do, right? Like, it's not a thing to me. And they go, hey, we want to partner with you. We got $15,000. Let's partner up and go 50-50. And I'm like, guys, that's not a value add for me. If you want to partner with me, you got to really bring me something that's going to make it a value add, because otherwise you guys are just asking me to split my profit with you guys for bringing in 15 grand. Don't get me wrong. 15 grand is a good amount of money. In the beginning, I probably would have jumped on that immediately. But right now that I'm so large, I can self-fund units. So I was like, so bring me something of value, whether we can purchase something together, whether we can open units at scale, whatever it is. And literally what they did is like, they put their head down and they're like, let's find some money. They came back a year later and they're like, yo, we got 500 grand. We did this whole NFT sale. We want you in on it. You're going to be a third member on the NFT side of things. Let's partner now to do the short-term rental side of things in person. And at this point, I'm like, guys, I'm already to the point where I'm not doing any more arbitrage. Why not take this money and go buy a building? And so that's where I sat them down. We had about an hour-and-a-half meeting, and I was like, I'll sell you guys 10 units. We'll solve the arbitrage side of things. We have an arbitrage business working. We'll take the remainder of that 500 grand and we'll go buy a building, which is what I was telling you yesterday, Savannah, that I got it's like $350,000 that we have sitting there now that we can go buy a building, right? And that's what we formed the partnership. We did an entire partnership on every aspect of the business. So.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that deal initially you would have jumped on before, you know, earlier in your days, but you wouldn't now. So that just goes to show everyone in here, like different people at different places in their real estate investing journey, different things make sense for them. So coming on, and I know a lot of people here like love binging meetups and listening to people talk about real estate. And then they hear all this stuff over and over and they're like, damn, I shouldn't take that deal because Rafa didn't take that deal, but Rafa's saying he would have taken that deal a couple of years ago. So you need to put that into perspective when you're listening to people and how they're doing real estate transactions, is that certain things may be more applicable to you in a certain period of your life and kind of where you're at. So always take that into consideration for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to jump. Wait, is Alex still on here? Oh, did he pop off? Did he fall off? No, I was going to let him say hi.
He's on there. I see him.
There you are, Alex.
Hey, I'm on here. And I locate my wife here. Just got off the plane. Hey, sorry I'm late.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. I was checking out all your pictures and videos. So jealous. Market research. Get to write all that off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't get any weed though.
It's a good vacation. It's a good write-off market research vacation.
Hell yeah, love it. Cool. Lenny, you had a second piece of that question too, how you're doing the distributions. Did you answer that, or was that in a separate context?
Yeah, I mean, if you can just
Okay.
go over the distributions one more time, and that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, I have several. So the first one is I give 33% of profit, true profit of one of my units to this one guy, right? And that's for 5 years. That's a simple one. The second one is for the loan, for one of them that I had a loan on. It was just, I was paying $250 a month on, and that's just a loan payback. So it's not really distributions. With this new partnership that I have right now, what we actually decided on is we're going to take 80% of profit. We're going to put it back into the business, and we're only going to pay ourselves 20% divided by 3. So 6.5% or something like that between the 3 of us. So it lowered my income significantly, but it's going to allow us to grow that business drastically, and be able to go out and buy these complexes with no problems, because otherwise you just kind of take money. But when I was doing the initial partnership, the distribution was whatever at the end of the day, which was profit. And when I say profit, I mean profit of every unit. So for example, out of my 32 units, my accountant, my bookkeeper, she sends me a report of the last prior month with everything broken down, and then overhead, right? Because I pay for all my flights, I pay for my car rentals, I pay for my hotels all through the company, but I don't take that stuff out of the profit of the units, because, or at least the units that I'm have investors with, where I have to pay out 33% of or 10% of. I have one that I'm doing a 50%. They brought the money, and this was a family member. They're like, hey, I got like 15 grand. I said, yo, let's get you started in short-term rentals. Give it to me. We'll just split everything 50-50 down the middle. And that was it. And they get 50% of one unit's true profit, right? And then I got another one that I do 15%, 1-5, not 50. So it's very simple. I say, hey, and then when I get that report at the end of the month, I run it, and I can show it to you guys if you guys. I don't mind sharing it with you guys here on the thing, but it's simple. I get the report. It's a simple P&L per unit, and then it says, hey, here's your profit. This is what goes out to this person at 33%. And then I build that up at the end of 6 months, because some months could be a loss, right? Like the slow months could be a loss, but the big months are super high. So at 6 months, I say, okay, here's what happened. January, we made $1,000. You get $3,333. February was break even. March, I'm talking third day, right? Third month. March is, I don't know, $2,000 profit. So whatever it evens out at the end of that 6 month. So from January to July 15th, I cut them a check. Hey, here's your check. Let's go get drinks. Let's go get food. Tax write-off on me. And then they love it. They just take their money back, and they get a significant return. I think last time for the 3 units, I paid them in 6 months. It was like $8,700 or something.
Awesome. That's so great.
Thank you. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
So what systems or technology, app, software, what do you have in place to kind of run some of this stuff? Like, what are your secret weapons to run this?
Yeah. So Hospitable is a big one. I use Hospitable for everything. It's my main property channel manager software, property management software. Yeah. So my PMS, which is basically, it syncs VRBO, Booking.com, my own direct website, and Airbnb together. So it's always calendar managed, is always synced. My pricing is for Price Labs. So I shoot Price Labs to Hospitable. Hospitable distributes the correct price to each OTA, right? So VRBO, I overpriced by 12%. Booking.com is by 29%. My website stays the same. I want people to book at my place so they get a discount there. And that's the biggest one. Then I have Turnover B&B for my cleanings. I don't need it, but it's just a backup because I've noticed that my cleaners tend to miss stuff sometimes and I don't want to have a unit unclean. So my Turnover B&B, they're logged in and they get the cleanings on top of that. And then I have Trello where I track all my maintenance. All of my SOPs, my procedures, they're all saved with videos in Trello. I use Loom to record all of my training videos. I use Slack for all my team communication. So I have all my my teams on Slack per channel. So every unit has a channel. And again, I can show you guys if you guys want. And then now we're using Monday.com to keep track of daily tasks for my virtual assistants, which is my second biggest are my virtual assistants. I have 3 assistants right now. They run my clock from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. And from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. there's nobody on because nobody really bothers you at that time, they're sleeping. But the biggest one is my VAs. They handle all of my guest communication, all of my processing, all of my admin tasks, literally everything. The business is completely automated. The only thing I handle now is my pricing and making sure my calendar is always booked.
So at what point did you implement the VAs for Airbnb communication?
I knew that was coming. I was hoping you didn't ask because I was stubborn. I was super stubborn. I waited till 18 units.
Wow.
And yeah, no, it sucked. I should have done it a lot sooner because, dude, it was like having dinner and I'm like answering guest response messages. Imagine like even right now, right? A guest, an inquiry comes in, I have to stop and answer it. And I was like, oh, I can handle this. I can handle this. And then when I realized, yo, you need to be a business owner, right? Stop working in the business, start figuring out how you can work on the business and grow it. I was like, okay, it's time. I have to spend the money to bring these people on. And keep in mind that I didn't pay myself for so long that I started actually really taking big paychecks now, right? When I had 18, 20 units. So I was like, okay, it's time for me to pay myself. I was debt free. I had nothing behind me. It was literally all cash flow coming in. And so when I got to 18 units, I was like, man, really need to get out of my own way here. And I brought them on and it took a long time. I went through about 8 VAs until I found a rock star, fully trained. It was awesome. She was actually a referral from another STR operator. They were using her part-time for like minimal tasks. And I'm like, yo, this girl can really grow. And I taught her and I gave her the freedom to make mistakes. I gave her the freedom to come up with new ideas. And now she's my manager VA. She's like, does all my admin work. I actually have a VA sourcing company now that we source VAs fully trained for short-term rental operators that teach them my entire system. I actually, and so I have one VA that covers 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. My admin VA that works from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And she covers the 2 to 6 in guest communications. And then I have my third VA that covers from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You guys, he said he went through 8 VAs before he found the one that he is working with. I want everyone to hear that again, because I think in this industry, it happens so much where you deal with a bad contractor or a bad cleaner or a bad this, and you're like, screw it, real estate investing is not for me. I can't do this. It's too much work. I wasn't built for it. I could imagine you were thinking that even after the 6th VA, that you were like, this is why I never implemented a VA. I need to just do it my own. None of these people can run it like I am. Like, I can only imagine the thoughts that were going through your head after dismissing that 6th and 7th VA and having to find a brand new one.
Yeah, it drove me nuts for a long time because like one thing too, like I love VAs, but VAs are like very, what's the word? You have to direct them word for word in order for them to do the task. Like a lot of them feel that they can't go out and do stuff themselves because they might mess up and they're out the door, right? Because people go through VAs like crazy. So I sat when I first started, that's how it kind of was. I would literally have to be like, hey, answer this message. Hey, say this. And I was like, why am I doing this? I'm already still telling you what to tell them, right? And so I was like, okay, we're going to go through a 3-month training period. And if at the end of 3 months, you still don't know and answer this by yourself, then we're going to have a problem. And it was like 3 months and they still would be like, hey, can I do this? Hey, can I respond this? And I'm like, you already have the freedom to do it. So over time, I was literally it was kind of like a learning curve for me on how to really manage and how to let people kind of take their own, the wheel. When I got this girl fully trained, I was like, the first thing I sat her down and I was like, all right, listen, I want somebody who can think on their feet. I want someone who's not afraid to make mistakes. I want someone who can make mistakes and learn from the mistakes. And I want someone who can really take take the wheel and be able to figure it out on themselves, right? Use a little intuition, use your common sense, where I don't have to tell you to, hey, pick up this piece of paper every time there's a piece of paper on the floor, right? As an example. And she's like, I think I can do that for you. I'm like, okay, cool, let's try you out. And so for the first month, I sat down and I was like, just watch me how I respond, what I do, what I say, pick up kind of like my demeanor, my way of speaking, the way I talk to guests, my customer service, and then you'll get an understanding. And dude, 30 days, it literally is all it took. She's like, Rafa, I can handle this. Rafa, I can do this. Yo, stop bothering me. I can take care of it. And she would make a mistake and she's like, hey, I screwed up big time. And I'm like, what do you mean you screwed up big time? And she's like, I made this. I was like, my company's still running. You didn't screw up big time. I was like, it cost me a couple $100. Who cares? Right? She lost us a reservation for like $700. And I was like, look, dude, I lose them all the time myself. We'll probably get it booked again by someone else. And she's like beating herself up about it. And I'm like, it's not a big deal. Just learn from what you did. Make sure that it doesn't happen again. And when I gave her that kind of like, she kind of went like, oh man, I can really build something here with this guy. And she just took off on her own. And yeah, now she's literally, she hires people for me. Like I'm hiring. I just had an interview with 3 more VAs. Actually, you know, Alex, for Tony and Omid, I'm getting them some VAs right now. I don't know if yeah. And so for them, I'm getting them. I got VAs for two other operators that are out in Texas and in Dallas and in Florida. And we train them. We teach them everything 100% completely. And we give them to them. And then, you know, that's what we do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think I need one here soon. So
Yeah,
I got you.
Just thinking that. I also noticed how you mentioned when I was thinking about the applications and the software, like scaling your business and what you're doing, like you mentioned SOPs. So if anyone doesn't know, standard operating procedures of like, you know, if someone were to come into your business and see how you handle basic tasks that's performed in your business, step by step, exactly how you should be handling it. And then Loom, a video recording of like people showing it. I've seen that everywhere in the industry right now. I know like for a lot of the softwares I use, they respond to my questions in Loom. So that's a super user-friendly video recording software that kind of helps with the process. But that's something that I've definitely had to learn too, even in my career as a nursing leader and administrator. Deal with certain employees and you have all sorts of them, right? Like you have employees that literally are step by step, need to be told exactly what to do. And then there's employees that you have that are very independent and kind of think on their own. And different employees function better with different like leaders. So, you know, I think a lot of people in this space are in a place where they want to potentially hire on a VA or have people working for them or different cleaners or contractors. And you have to take into consideration that if you've ever managed people before, that you're learning too. And so you can't displace all that blame on the people that you're hiring. You do have to reflect in yourself as a leader or business owner of like, okay, how can I make this process better? And I'm sure, Rafa, as you kind of went through that and forming your standard operating procedures, you saw how important that was to actually scaling your business. It's huge.
Yeah.
Liz, you can go ahead and hop off and answer a question.
Hi, Rafa. Thank you for being here. I'm a fan of the Big Break Show, and I'm a student of Jesse's masterclass. Yeah. So I have a question. You mentioned the housing contracts, and have you done housing contracts through Rental Arbitrage? And when you do, how are those conversations different? Do you mention that you're not the property owner, but you have a lease with the property owner, or do you not mention that at all when you're doing rental arbitrage with and getting housing contracts specifically?
When you say housing contracts, are you talking about with like hospitals or like just anything in general?
Yeah, either hospitals, insurance companies, any type of contract that is not that requires a lease.
Yeah, gotcha. Actually, you know, to be honest, all the ones I've done, I've never even brought it up. There's no reason to. You're there to provide housing for them, right? Safe, affordable housing for whoever you're housing. And when you provide that, they don't really care as long as you can have everything in place. Because remember, we already have it in writing that we can bring whoever we want into these places, right? Not whoever we want, people who are actually saying we're going to bring in. So when I provide the place, whether it's short-term or long-term to anybody, they don't care as long as they can have what they're asking for. The biggest ones for me are insurance agencies and contracting companies. They're the greatest, and restaurants too. But like, I don't even go after medical professionals as much as like Jesse does. I only started doing it because he's always pushing me to do it because I never really cared to. honestly, because I would always do so many different contracts with, like, I have a company who brings contractors out here and they'll rent out my place for like, I think 45 days at a time. And they do it 3-4 times out of the year and they pay me like $9,000. And they'll take like 3-4 units in one location, right? And they don't care that it's leased. They just care that it's nice, that it's what their people want, and that it's furnished. That's really what it is. As far as like the restaurant, so I used to have a guy, the head chef for a big restaurant out in downtown Disney, and he would always stay with me for it was 4.5 months at a time, and he wouldn't even stay there. He was always traveling around. He just wanted it secured for when he did show up, it was there. So they don't really care. Like my nurses, when they come in, they're like, hey, I just want to make sure that I can have somewhere comfortable, that there's blackout curtains, and that I'm allowed to stay there. Otherwise, they don't even care. I never even bring it up. There's no reason to.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple of other questions come in. So where does Rafa go to research if rental arbitrage is worth the investment, and best smart lock recommendation?
So, it's funny. When I first started, I did no research. I just said, hey, Disneyland's here. I'm going to kill it. And thank God I did, because it's so reckless, right? Like, I have a big risk tolerance though. Like, here's my thing, right? I quit my job after 3 units and I was making no money, right? I did no research. I was going based off of the fact that, hey, I'm going to make it work no matter what happens. Now, I don't do that anymore. I actually run numbers. So it's simple. Just like you do for when you purchase a house, you take your mortgage and you want to make sure that you're going to make money above your mortgage plus operating expenses. It's the same thing with the lease, right? Number one, if you're trying to figure out if you're going to make money. Oh, did I lose you guys? You guys still there? Okay, cool. No, there you are.
You're good.
Okay. So okay. So you're gonna take your lease, right? Your monthly lease, whether it's $3,000, $2,000, $1,500, whatever it is. For me, it's usually $3,000 here in Orange County. And so you take the lease, then you're gonna add all your operating expenses, which is electricity, gas, internet, and then I do about $50 in consumables, and that's it, right? So for me, it's about $3,600. Usually 38, because now I have VAs and I also pay for storage now. So my average is about $3,800 for a really expensive 2-bedroom apartment or whatever. And then I run the numbers to see what they're going to make on a nightly basis. So if I take $3,800 and divide it by 28, because I'm accounting for 2 days vacancy, right? And if you want to play it safe, do it by 26. You divide that and then it gives you your break-even number. If you can make anything above that per night, you know you're going to be in profit. Right? And then you say, hey, I want to make $1,500 a month in profit. So then you're going to take 3,800 plus 1,500, divide that by 26. That's how much you have to absolutely make per night, right? And let me do the math for you guys really quick. This is just so you can get an idea if it's going to work out for you, right? So 3,800, this is for 2-bedroom apartment too, guys, okay? Times plus 1,500, 5,300, divided by 26, we're looking at $203 a night, right? On a 2-bedroom apartment, that's very, very doable. You know what I mean? And most of the time, depending on your market, you got to average out. You also got to know that when you do the research, you got to check the months. And then you can run websites like AirDNA and MashAdvisor. I typically will only do that if it's a market away from where I'm at. I know here very comfortably, I can do $200 a night all day long during the summer. Some of my 2 bedrooms are doing $500 a night. It's insane. And I know I'm going to kill it, right? But if you can, whenever you run your numbers, whether you're running comps on Airbnb or pulling AirDNA or MashAdvisor, and you see that you're going to be in that 75 percentile of $240 a night for a 2-bedroom apartment, odds are you're going to do pretty well. Does that make sense? And then the smart lock question. So I love okay, I don't love them. Gosh darn it. It's like a love-hate relationship. The Yale SL are really good, but they have their flaws. Right? And don't get the keypad, the digital keypad, get the one with the key insert, because if the digital one fails, there's no way for you to put a key in it and you have to literally knock down the door. So I get the Yale SL with the Wi-Fi Connect bridge. That's the one you guys have to get. Yale SL Wi-Fi Connect bridge, very specific because they have like 40 different brands. And that one lets you connect Wi-Fi, lets you connect to your Airbnb account, and it sets codes for you automatically. The problem is if Wi-Fi goes down, you have to set the code yourself because it won't do it. It's better than the August locks. I used August for a long time. They suck. I don't like them. The Schlage locks are awesome if you can ever get hospitable to actually connect, because it's so new, it's always bugging out. And then I use the Vivint security locks, which are the Jorge, what are the Vivint locks? You know the brand? Is it Schlage?
Quickset.
Quickset. Yes, there you go. Quickset. Thank you. Quickset. Yes.
Thanks, Erwin, for that. Erwin Shan.
Oh, Erwin, what's up, buddy? Yeah, and it's Quickset. So those are great because they connect. So when you guys get a lock, make sure that it comes with the they're not running off the Wi-Fi, they're running off of the man, I'm totally blanking. It's a specific type of connection. It's almost like Bluetooth connection, but it's not. And what it does is it links it directly to the panel, so you can change codes and the battery lasts forever. Some of my Vivint systems, my Vivint locks, I haven't changed batteries, kid you guys not, for like 19 months. And the Z-Wave, there you go.
Z-Wave.
Thank you when you saved my life today. Yeah, the Z-Wave. And so the Z-Wave really will not kill your battery at all. That's the problem I had with August, is that we were changing batteries every single month. And it was a pain because cleaners would forget to change them. We would forget to go out and do it. The guests would get locked down. It was like, dude. And then the August locks, the little code separate keypad thing always fails. I noticed that when the sun hits it too hard, it bugs out and it doesn't connect. And so I was like, I'm done with August. And then we tried the Yale, and the Yale's really good. The batteries probably last about 3 months on those. And then the Z-Wave locks, man, those are gold. But the problem is that with the Vivint Z-Wave locks, you have to change the codes yourself. There's no auto changing. But you know, if you have a VA, my VA is at 3:50 p.m. every day. They just change all my codes, and they double check that all my codes were actually automated if they're supposed to be automated. Hopefully that answers it.
Wow. Yeah. If you ever wanted to know anything about locks, you guys rewind that a minute and then rewatch that. That's awesome. Great insight. I
have more, but yeah.
Almost 6. I didn't even get to ask you anything about multifamily, but I do want to ask you before you share. And so everyone knows how they can get a hold of you. I want you to be able to share that information. Why the podcast? What motivated you to start that? And why are you doing that?
So when COVID hit, I started kind of, dude, I was super shy. Like I'm super like anti-speaking. I would get nervous. Even now, sometimes I'm like, you can hear my voice, it gets all shaky. And so I started getting really comfortable talking to people, and I went on this app called Clubhouse, and I found a short-term rental room on Clubhouse, and I started talking, and I heard some people give some like iffy advice. And so I was like, yo, I got to kind of come in here and give my 2 cents. Right. And so it built the confidence up. Well, in the midst of Clubhouse, it became really popular during COVID, like super popular. Everybody was on it. I kind of got a little bit of traction. People knew me as like the short-term rental guy on there. And I met Jesse. Jesse came on and he was asking me a bunch of short-term rental questions. At that time, Jesse was kind of transitioning, trying to figure out what he wanted to do. And so I got really close with Jesse. We were on private calls all the time on Clubhouse. And then one day I was like, yo, we should maybe start our own Clubhouse rooms. And he's like, I'm down. And he's like, let's call it the Big Break. And I'm like, oh, I love that. And so we started our own Clubhouse rooms, and it was every Monday and Friday. Well, Clubhouse started dying out. And at the same time, a buddy of mine, he's got a really big podcast. And then, you know, my mentor, obviously, he had a really big podcast. And so I was like, you know what, we should just start talking about this stuff so that the rest of the world can hear it, rather than just us talking in this little tiny room, right? And so I sat down with Jesse, and Jesse was like, hey, we were like talking about it, came up as an idea. And I go, Jesse, you want to do it? Let's do it together. And he's like, yeah, hey, I'll do it with you. And we sat down and we decided, hey, let's just buy a bunch of equipment. So we went all crazy. Like I bought like a Roadcaster, a super expensive mic. Like I bought like this whole setup. And I'm like,
expensive.
Dude, when I looked at it, I spent like $2,500 and I'm like, oh my God. I was like, all we need is a cell phone and a headset. Like there's no need to spend all this. But I'll tell you what, when I spent everything, I was like, there's no turning back now. I didn't spend this money for nothing. So I made Jesse go out and buy them because he was trying to use like his headset. I was like, no, I bought this. You're going to go out and buy this. So he went out and bought the headset. I mean, the mic. And he ended up buying like this different. He didn't buy the Roadcaster. He bought something else. And then I made him go get a nice camera because I went and bought a nice camera. And we were kind of pushing each other to say, hey, we're already at this level of like expenses. Let's start doing it. And at first it was supposed to be just me and him talking about our experiences. But then, you know, that gets old and boring after a while. So I was like, let's start actually bringing people on, to people who we want to talk to, who can help bring value to our listeners. And that's what we did. We started inviting people. And now we just kind of shoot out the invite to whoever wants to come on that we kind of like, not anybody, like we don't just let anybody in anymore. It's anybody that we think can bring value from our networking group or our relationships to the actual listeners. And so far it's been great. I mean, we've got a ton of views, a ton of listens so far. But it was more to get our name out there, because the more you get your name out there, it helps you a lot. Like, you become very credible. And what really overdid it for me was when I came out on Bigger Pockets. Jesse was like, dude, because we were talking about it forever, right? Like, hey, I told him, let's do it, be my co-host. He's like, okay. But it was like, when are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? And like, we're always all over the place. And when I came out on Bigger Pockets, I got a really big following. And it was like, everybody was calling me. And I was like, dude, and I showed Jesse, and he's like, dude, let's start the podcast. You have a following right now. Let's get it going. And so I was like, okay. And so we did. We had all the equipment sitting there already. And so we started recording and just putting it out. We just said, hey, let's just go out and record. If it comes off weird, it comes off weird. And it turned out to be good.
Amazing. I went on podcasts when I first established my brand, Net Worth Nurse, November 2020. My whole goal was to go on 100 podcasts and just get comfortable talking about real estate, get comfortable talking about my brand and what I was doing. And I didn't even think about all the amazing people that I would meet along the way. Like the hosts that all host podcasts are doing really amazing things in the real estate space. So that was one thing that I did in my business that paid off 10 times more than I could have ever imagined, was going on 100 podcasts when I first launched my brand. So there's so much power in that and getting comfortable. And another thing that I want to point out to everyone is that Rafa just admitted that he was very shy, did not want to openly come up and talk about real estate. And look at him now, coming on to these meetups and sharing very, deep information about what you're doing in the business. I know I was literally messaging someone DM'd me earlier today of like, hey, I've joined your guys' Facebook group, but I just haven't gotten the courage. I'm super shy, so I haven't gotten the courage to come to your Zoom meetups. And I was just thinking, oh man, come be a fly on the wall. So just the fact that all of you guys are here learning about this information, give yourself a pat on the back. I know it can be very vulnerable to come to these type of meetups and show face and talk about what you're doing, but it has proven, and you see proof and point how beneficial it is to business in general and making kind of strides on your goals. So Rafa, I've learned so much. I'm so glad that you came on to talk to us. This is so insightful and useful. How can people get a hold of you or learn more about you?
Yeah, the easiest and best way is on Instagram. Or if you guys want to, we also have a Facebook group called Airbnb The Big Break. I usually go on there and answer people's questions about like their STR stuff. But Instagram is the best way. I always respond. It takes me a while, but I always respond.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much. Alex, do you have any parting words before we disconnect?
No, I was so excited to get Rafa on here because I knew he was going to be one of our best guests, because the dude is doing like crazy things. I always tell people you need more friends in your life, real estate friends that are doing big things. I don't even know if he talked about the NFT stuff. I think that's going to be like the next biggest thing that people are going to be doing in the next 2-3 years here. And he's, I always love listening to him talk, because he's created like all of these systems on top of systems, and it puts you on your toes, So, but thanks for coming on, Rafa.
No, thank you, Alex. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'll tell you guys about the NFT at a different time once we get established. But man, this thing's really, kid you not, we're going to change a lot in this space, because what we're doing, nobody's done before, right? These NFT things, like usually they're like scrubs and people like rip people off. That's why like I was against it when I first got into it, because I've heard so many people get ripped off. But wait till we're done with this. It's going to be game changer for sure. 100%.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see that. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us on another Wednesday at Zoom call. Share with your friends, anyone you guys know who's interested in learning more about real estate. Our goal is to get really great guests on here and spread the knowledge and all the different ways that you can make money out here. So again, thank you guys for being here, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rafa.
Thank you.